Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. And today we have a Tier 9 French battleship, the Jean Bart, in a Tier 10 battle here on the Crash Zone Alpha map, with an aircraft carrier on each team. The Jean Bart, played for us today by Gnartung, is no longer available in World of Warships. It's been removed from the armory along with the Smolensk, because there were just too many of them in Tier 9 and 10 battles. And if I'm being completely honest, I can kind of see why. Both why they were removed and why there were so many of those two ships in Tier 9 and 10 battles. The Smolensk, for what should be obvious reasons, a high explosive spitting, rapid firing light cruiser with ridiculous range and accuracy, and a smokescreen. And they said the Belfast was bad. But the Jean Bart, well, nobody ever stared at a battle loading screen and said, oh no, there are 4 Jean Barts on the enemy team. In the way that you do when you see a number of Smolensks that you're going to have to fight. But for my money, I think the Jean Bart's a better ship. And yet there's nothing obviously broken and overpowered about it. It's just a good all-round battleship. It does have the main battery reload booster gimmick, but so do other French battleships and French cruisers. Big deal. In many ways you could say that the Jean Bart is nothing more than a Tier 9 Richelieu, and the Richelieu's not very good. But the Jean Bart is. It is a lot like the Richelieu, not just in looks. It has exactly the same 380mm guns, with exactly the same double quad turret configuration up front, and exactly the same fire control systems as the Richelieu. But whereas the Richelieu, with these guns, would struggle to hit the broadside of a barn from the inside, the Jean Bart is actually reasonably accurate. And despite the guns only being 45 calibers long, they're actually fairly stubby barrels. They have pretty good muzzle velocity of 830 meters per second. So you don't have to wait that long for the shells to actually reach the target. The reload's pretty quick as well, and obviously if you use the main battery reload booster, it's even quicker still. There are, however, some fairly significant downsides. It has the lowest health of any of the Tier 9 battleships, and it's cursed with that same 32mm armour plating configuration as most of the other, in fact all of the other high-tier French battleships, which makes it particularly vulnerable to high explosive spam from battleships and cruisers. So, unlike the Smolensk, which has no obvious disadvantages, the Jean Bart definitely does, and yet it's still an incredibly popular ship, or was, until it was removed from the armory for being an incredibly popular ship. But why was it such an incredibly popular ship? Why were so many people buying Jean Barts for coal? And I think the answer is twofold. One, it's a good ship, and two, there are not that many other Tier 9 battleships that you could buy for coal. There are plenty of Tier 9 battleships that you can buy for resources, but those resources are usually steel, or free XP, or gold. When it came to what to spend your coal on, there weren't that many options. Well, there were plenty of options, but not all of them were as solid a return on your investment as the Jean Bart ones. Gnartung's been doing some fairly consistent damage to that Georgia over there, but the Brindisi has just executed a full turn and popped out of his smoke, and now he's given a nice, flat, lovely broadside, and, well, 380mm guns are especially good at punishing cruisers. And yep, double citadel. A good 20,000 damage done. That Brindisi is not going to be too happy. The team are actually doing reasonably well at the moment, despite being the first to lose a ship. They are about to take their second cap, there it is, and they've managed to successfully, so far, at least prevent the enemy from taking this one. What on earth is that Georgia doing? Does he not... Do you not know there's a battleship here shooting at you? Oh, but I'm in a battleship, I'll be fine. Yeah, but the Georgia's thing is its big guns, not its big armour. You're basically an Iowa, except with 18-inch guns. Georgia's in the turn now, guns are ready to go, but the Brindisi is... oh, that is a much, much better target. And maybe, if he can sink this Brindisi, the Georgia will have turned sufficiently so that he can catch him on the reload when he's heading in the other direction, in the same way as he just did the Brindisi earlier. Nope, he was robbed. Gutted. That so should have been a kill. But as predicted, the Georgia has turned around and is now once again providing a flat broadside and is burning. You know, if he hits him, the Georgia's dead. I mean, when the Georgia was angled earlier, he was doing anything between 5 and 8,000 damage. Well, okay. The guns Richelieu'd on him again. But it doesn't matter, because the Georgia died anyway. You've got to ask yourself, why did the Georgia, and earlier before him the Brindisi too, come all the way out from behind the cover of the island like that, exposing big, flat, juicy broadsides to shoot at, before executing a turn, and then getting back into cover? Why not turn while behind cover? Doesn't that make more sense? And I'm struggling to think of a reason why. I thought, well, perhaps because there's a Grosser Kurfürst down here shooting at them as well, maybe they were waiting for him to fire, but, well, then why drive out in front of the Jean Bart? Speaking of people driving out in front of battleships with guns loaded and ready to fire, check out the Moskva. 52,000 health, 0 health. Like that. What the hell did he think he was doing? Why was the Moskva in such a rush to get around the side of the island and shoot at the bows of a Montana with his 220mm guns? Just, you know, these are questions that we're never going to get an answer to. I don't know, maybe he was just distracted by the smell of a freshly opened pot of glue. just couldn't help himself. Your guess is as good as mine. But Gnartung is becoming the focus of... Well, he doesn't actually have the priority target skill, so it's difficult to say exactly how many ships are targeting him at the moment, but I'm going to hazard a guess and say it's all of them. Luckily, there is a handy island here that he can use to shelter behind, which of course is precisely why he picked this moment and this direction in which to make his move. Still, that is a lot of enemy ships, and backup down here is on the thin side. There's just that Grosser Kurfürst and an Ibuki, and the Ibuki is very wisely keeping his distance. The range is a lot better on the Brindisi now. Let's see if we can't finish him off. Yeah, there we go. Nice. 115,000 damage. Now, Gnartung is not going to make the same mistake that so far everybody else has done and sail out from behind a perfectly good piece of cover in order to get broadside to every gun in the enemy fleet. The idea behind island cover is that you use it to ensure that you don't have to fight more than one ship at a time, if at all possible. Although, well, that's not always going to be possible. I mean, look at this lot. No shortage of targets to shoot at, but hang on a minute. What is the Montana doing? Now, you shouldn't expect to citadel a Montana because its citadel is basically underwater, but, you know, if you do get a citadel when you're shooting one of these things, obviously you're going to take it. Oh, lovely. Well, here's the thing though, the Montana came around the corner, guns blazing away at a bow-tanking Grosser Kurfürst. Notice how his guns are starting to turn around, as if he's going, oh, where did that Jean Bart come from? And of course the reload booster is active, because why wouldn't it be when you've got a target like that to shoot at? And now he's up to over 150,000 damage. The Montana is trying to make the best of a bad deal here. He's realised that he's screwed up on an epic scale here, so he's trying to ram the Grosser Kurfürst, but the Grosser Kurfürst saw it coming, and he's pretty quick in a straight line, so the Montana even fails at the ram. Now this is where Gnartung, after that hit on the Montana, decides, and it's a reasonable assumption to make, that the Grosser Kurfürst secondaries are going to finish him off, so he shoots the Albemarle instead. Unfortunately, while he does sink the Albemarle managed to get its torpedoes away, and the Montana is still alive. Against all of the odds, he's getting hammered by Gnartung's secondaries, but the secondaries on this ship are only 100mm, and so they can't actually penetrate the armour of the Montana. So unless they set a fire, Gnartung's going to have to finish him off with the main batteries, which of course he's entirely capable of doing. And that just leaves the one surviving Montana, who was backing off earlier and trying to recover some health, but he backed up so far that he came around the other side of the island, and he's been getting farmed with 8-inch high explosive shells from the Ibuki to the rear. And Gnartung has reloaded, and there's kill number 4. Is that the enemy carrier? Do you think we might be seeing a Kraken unleashed anytime soon? But the big question that I really want the answer to right now is, why is the Lexington still sailing south? Look at the map. All of his surviving teammates are up to the north. Ooh, high caliber, 240,000 damage. There's nothing for the Lexington in that direction but the map border and death. And is he dropping torpedoes from the front? He is dropping torpedoes from the front. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look at a battleship, in fact most ships in general, they tend to be a lot longer in one direction than another. And it's not from the front. So, I don't know. Oh, Gnartung, you were robbed. That should have been a kill. 800 health remaining. Wait, now he's dropping torpedoes from the rear? Really? Okay, so the Lexington's dead with this shot, and that is going to be the Kraken unleashed. But can we just stop and think about this for a minute? Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that this is the way playing an aircraft carrier works, right? You're sending a strike against the target, and in order to decide from which angle that strike is launched, you have to blindfold yourself and then just randomly roll your face over the keyboard. And depending on which combinations of keys you strike, that determines whether or not you're going to attack the target from the front, rear, left or right. So even if the Lexington had been rolling his face all over the keyboard and making no conscious decision on how to conduct those attacks, he'd have still had two 50-50 chances of getting it right. But instead he thought about it and still got it wrong twice. Just think about that for a minute. Oh, Gnartung spotted. Nothing in visual range. I think there may be an enemy destroyer nearby. In fact, oh look. Somebody's capping Alpha. I think we know where the enemy destroyer might be. Time for a swift course change. You never know, there may be torpedoes on the way. The cargo's sending aircraft over, that's good to see. Yep, there he is, it's the Holland. Shots out, there are the torpedoes. Nice. Unfortunately, while that is good news, they're now down to the last 2 ships left alive on their team. They just lost the Ibuki, but he did manage to take a Smolensk down with him, so it's all good. Carrier continuing to spot the Holland. Successfully avoided his second wave of torpedoes. Shots out once again. It's not quite a kill, but it was a lot of damage. He's obviously switched to the high explosive shells here. The Holland desperately trying to break contact. I've got to admit, that was a remarkably brave move for a destroyer that doesn't have a smoke screen to get that close to an aircraft carrier just to push a cap. I've never been that confident. And there's kill number 6. So it's the Cargo and the Jean Bart, and I believe those shots were from the enemy Jean Bart, backed up by a Harugumo. So, on paper, and in reality, the enemy team have a tier 9 and a tier 10 against our tier 9 and tier 8, which doesn't sound good until you remember that our tier 8 is an aircraft carrier. Which means it's not a good time to be in a Harugumo. And yep, there he is. The Harugumo will be fine, Jingles. Don't forget, this is the tier 10 variant of a destroyer that was specifically designed by the Imperial Japanese Navy to shoot down aircraft. And they're only tier 8 aircraft. In fact, they're not even tier 8 aircraft. That's the Cargo's thing. The ship itself is tier 8, but its aircraft are, I think, tier 6 or 7. It just gets a lot of them in big squadrons. So, yeah, the Harugumo will be fine. Yeah, thanks. I see what you did there. You lot must think I'm new here or something. But even so, it's not the damage that the Kaga's going to do to the Harugumo, and he is going to do some damage. It's keeping him spotted. Not just so that Gnartung can hit him with these 380mm guns and his massed secondaries, but also so Gnartung can avoid his torpedoes. Yes, I know, Akazuki, but look, Gnartung's spotted, so he knows that the Harugumo has come out from behind the island, even though the Kaga couldn't get aircraft over there in time to visually locate him. No, Akazuki, you should cover your eyes and not watch, because we're about to witness some extreme cruelty to small boats. You see, the Harugumo has popped his smokescreen. Smart thing to do under the circumstances, and he, at least, unlike the Halland, has a smokescreen, so the Halland at least had the excuse of not having one. But while popping the smokescreen was the smart thing to do, staying inside the smokescreen would have been even smarter. And of course, because he was continually spotted, not only is Gnartung able to keep shooting at him, but he's also able to avoid the torpedoes. Well, all but one of them. And the Harugumo is dead. Kill number 7. Taking that one torpedo hit was unfortunate, although he's lucky he didn't take more than one, because now he's at a significant health disadvantage against the enemy Tier 9 battleship. The Harugumo obviously got his torpedo reload booster off, but none of those are going to hit. But for this battle to have a different ending, all or most of them were going to have to hit, because that Jean Bart is the last surviving ship on the enemy team, and Gnartung has a surviving teammate. So Gnartung doesn't need to survive this encounter, as long as the enemy Jean Bart doesn't either. See if you can spot the moment when that enemy Jean Bart realises that his massive health advantage doesn't matter if you get rammed. He's now turning exactly the wrong way to turn if you want to avoid getting rammed. If he'd kept going the way he was going, he might have been able to get away with this, but instead he decided to turn in to try to avoid the Kaga's torpedoes, but the torpedoes aren't going to kill him. A head-on collision with another Jean Bart, on the other hand, definitely does. 8 kills and 350,000 damage for Gnartung in a Tier 9 French battleship in a Tier 10 battle on the Crash Zone Alpha map. Now I know what you're all thinking, how come I never have enemies like that when I'm playing World of Warships? And yes, okay, you do make a fair point, but at the same time, you have to hand it to Gnartung for his strict observance of one of Murphy's laws of combat. Never interrupt the enemy when they're making a mistake. And Gnartung did not interrupt them, because that would have just been rude. He let them make the mistakes, and then he made them pay for it. And that's why he finished this battle with 8 kills and 350,000 damage. Well done, Gnartung. Everyone else, I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you next time.